want me to chop you guys up a little bit?
We're ready. We'll get some breakfast going whenever you're ready.
Okay, let me make a hot chocolate for this
Yeah,
table down
no-
here, and then I'll come get you some menus.
Okay.
Hey, very good, thank you. Well, Mr. Walt, this is our version of social media for the Amish this morning since Facebook is down.
I'm looking forward to meeting some Amish who will wander in and appreciate the technology.
Well, we've definitely, and I appreciate your patience playing guinea pig with this stuff. But isn't this frustrating? You know what? We depend so heavily on this stuff, and it. Can you imagine? You know, with your experience in the auto industry, if you had a car company that operated like this, like Facebook, with their customer service and everything. I just can't even imagine, you know, you have a warranty issue and you call them and says, would you like to hold for 120 hours and we'll check on that.
Well, remember the old jokes about Microsoft designing software for airplanes? That you would, the pilot is flying along and all of a sudden you get the blue screen of death and the software is rebooting and you hope that it will successfully reboot before you hit ground.
Yeah, it's needless to say, we're talking about, I've been having troubles with Facebook being down, and gosh, I don't even have words for the amount of frustration and things with this. But the good news is I don't have to look for a reason to drink. If I get it.
Yeah, I never had trouble finding a reason to drink.
Yeah, we're just having all kinds of fun. Joe and the road crew, they were supposed to be out here last summer, but
come along for the ride. Jimmy's America. Jimmy, please, America.
Thank you.
Do you know what you guys want, or?
just
can
give
I-
it a couple minutes.
Okay, I'm gonna take them
Yeah,
and
no
then I'll be
problem.
right back.
Yeah, it's definitely, we're sailing in uncharted waters here today. I'm not sure how this is going to work. I've never done this before. And, of course, that never stopped me before. Vasectomies and brain surgery, those are the only things I haven't tried this way. I even found people that were interested in taking me up on my training.
I can't imagine why. I mean, sometimes you deal with doctors that you wonder if they do know how to do anything.
Well, that's why they always have been practicing medicine for 30 years.
Yes, you're right. And they may or may not have gotten it right yet.
It always bothered me. I always felt gypped by doctors. I remember when Judy was pregnant with David, I was all excited to drive down to Phoenix. We were going to go see a baby doctor. Total false advertising. He wasn't. The guy was 60 if he was a day. That just always bothers me.
I know. How can you be?
Maybe I take things too literally.
Well, sometimes taking them literally is the only way to deal with it, because if you don't, you have no idea what you're getting into.
Yeah, well, that's it exactly. We're down here at Calico's restaurant here in Kingman, Arizona this morning, trying to figure out what the world to eat. And food's always
And if you're ever in Kingman, you want to find Calico's, because it's got really, really good food. It is the kind of old-fashioned all-American coffee shop that you went in and you knew you were going to get a good meal.
Amish social media. The
You're
local
right.
coffee shop, the local diner.
Right.
People actually talk to each other. Yeah, God, it's been frustrating this week. And it seems like, as soon as I know the answers, somebody's changed the questions. And you can't even have a cheat sheet because it just changes by the minute.
You're right. Yeah. What were those cheat sheets that we all had in high school that gave you a summary of the books you were supposed to read, a summary, quick and dirty math problems and so forth.
Oh yeah, Cliff Notes.
Cliff Notes, that
Yeah.
was it. Cliff Notes, yes. Yes, and there are no Cliff Notes
No,
for technology.
no, the scary thing is you think these people are smarter than you that's come up with all this, and you realize they don't have any clue either. They just threw enough crap against the wall until it stick. And so anyway, I guess maybe that's why I'm going backwards with the Beast and going back to a 51 Chevy. Something that kind of half-ass makes sense. And of course, the way now gas prices are going, well, nothing else. I can put a mailbox on the fender and call it home.
Well, I spent a good part of my life working in what used to be called computers, and then it became data processing, then it became information technology. I have absolutely no clue what it's called now. And the one thing that I remember so very well is that when people would write programs, just for their own company, you write the program and hand it to the employee that's going to use it, and they would say, well, I don't understand why it does this. And you say, well, I know exactly why it does that. And they look at you and you say, of course you know why it does that. You wrote it. And that's very much the problem with modern computer programming and technology. The guy who wrote it knows why it does what it does because he wrote it. And it's almost always a he, too.
It reminds me of those old. I feel.
right there, okay?
Okay.
You bet, no problem. It reminds me a lot of that one of those old Far Side cartoons about brain surgery. The surgeon standing there with a pencil poking the guy in the brain. Let's see what this does. Are you back to work now at the Benelli House yet, or?
I'm going out. I will go back this Thursday. That would be my first day back. I just recovered from, I'm in the process of recovering from some surgery. It turns out that the arteries feeding my brain, one was blocked 90%, the other one was blocked 80%, which I thought was very useful learning because it gave me the excuse I needed for why I could never do simple arithmetic. But anyway, so a doctor finally decided they needed to clean this up. So he cut a big hole in my neck, put some used radiator hose in there and now I'm getting all kinds of blood in my brain, and I don't think my brain has a clue what to do with it.
I don't even know what that is. Man, you've got a couple of years on me, but I swear, Walt, it seems like most every day I've walked into a Russian movie with Japanese subtitles. It's dubbed in French, and I just have this overwhelming, stressful feeling there's going to be a test on this tomorrow.
Well, that's all right, because if you fail the test, they just let you repeat it forever.
Well, yeah, I don't even know, like the situation here is just buffaloed, and we depend so heavily on this. And when I call, like I was telling you yesterday, you even go to the Facebook help pages, and the information and why you're locked or how to fix it is conflicting. It doesn't make
I
sense.
can believe that,
And
yeah.
it took me probably an hour and a half to find a phone number to call. And like I was telling you, I call and the classic line though, the next available technician would be with you. Do you want to wait or give us your phone number and we'll call you as soon as they become available. The current wait time is 120 hours. And my first thought was in my mind, I wonder if anybody has actually said, I'll wait. And then just relocated everything to the bathroom and sat there.
You wonder how they can even imagine putting something like that out there.
Yeah.
120 hours wait time.
Yeah, totally defective, gosh darn it. Yeah, it's just the whole thing has just been so mind-boggling. And for no apparent reason, but such is life, I guess.
It is. Not much we can do about it.
I was out there yesterday, did a walking tour for the college, and it delved into some automotive history. Of course, I like to talk about cars, but I'm always amazed by some of the things they used to do with cars. And I guess that would be the closest analogy we have to what this is. But I got talking about Benjamin Briscoe yesterday, that is an example of that highly intelligent, very smart, very successful people can be very stupid. And Briscoe, he had bankrolled David Buick. He was partnered up with Jonathan Maxwell before going out on his own, and came up with this idea to have a car with one headlight, save some money on manufacturing costs. We had one headlight molded into the radiator shell. Well, even at that time, there were 7 or 8 states that wouldn't allow a motor vehicle on the road without 2 headlights.
Okay.
So we already had that problem. And then a plate glass windshield, I don't know how smart that was. It was pretty much common. But I like the way that he addressed keeping weight down and cost of body repair, because your basic body, your doors and everything were done with laminated paper mache over wood framing.
Here comes
Here
our
comes
beautiful
trouble.
waitress who's going to take our order. Go ahead and order.
I'll do the Mexicano,
How would you like your eggs?
over easy.
Hash browns or country potatoes?
Country potatoes,
And white, wheat, rye, sourdough, English muffin?
dry wheat.
Wheat?
Yeah, dry.
Thank you, Jen.
Country Benedict.
How would you like your eggs?
I don't know, sunny side up. I never know. I want my eggs the way my wife fixes them. I have no clue what she calls it.
We'll call it,
Anyway, yeah.
excuse us, we're gonna call it
Hash
Walt's.
browns or country potatoes?
I think the country, please.
All right, gentlemen, thank you.
All right.
We'll call Walt's wife and see how she fixes the
That's
eggs.
right, we
Yeah.
need to.
And I don't think
You
she'll know.
don't even have to ask next time.
I don't think she'll know either. You know, that paper mache doors, well, the nice thing about paper mache is that you can change it easily.
Well, that was one of his ideas.
Yeah. You didn't like this design, you could get another design. It's a bit problematic when it rains.
Well, there was a bunch of problematic things with the Briscoe. It was basically a pretty good car, but another thing that was really innovative that was kind of fascinating. Now you had this laminated paper mache bodied car with a plate glass windshield, no brakes. Of course, none of the cars did. You had brakes on the rear wheels only,
Okay.
mechanical. And then, great advertising campaign. He bought the car with a 4-cylinder. And his advertising campaign was, drive it for a month, and if you find that you need more power, you pay the cost of installation and $100, and we'll put a V8 in it.
In the paper mache car.
With plate glass windows.
Whoa.
It's kind of like something you would devise for as a training vehicle for kamikaze pilots.
Yes, you're right. Well, of course, many of the founders of the automobile industry really were the kind of geniuses that they could see how to do something. They would do it, and then once they decided this works, we ain't never going to change nothing. Ford was losing sales to Chevy because Chevy was modernizing their
Yeah.
cars, and Ford was sticking to the Model T works. We're going to stay with it. And Henry Ford almost put Ford Motor Company out of business.
Yeah.
And
Well, yeah, Ford, he just kept lowering the price by taking more and more stuff off the car. I found it interesting. I found recently that Chrysler and a lot of the companies in the mid-20s started doing hydraulic brakes. Ford spent a huge amount of money running full-page ads about how dangerous hydraulic brakes were,
Yes.
to justify the fact that his cars had mechanical brakes until about 1940.
oh my God, I didn't realize it was that late.
Yeah, I think it was 39 or 40.
Oh, wow.
I had an old mechanic tell me once that if you bought a V8 Ford in the 30s, the only way you could be sure of stopping it was aim it at a brick wall.
That usually works. But if that happens, then you get another Ford.
Yeah, my question
Because you already know how to deal with it.
going back full circle on this Facebook stuff, I am number one surprised that there's, and Microsoft for that matter, I'm surprised that they still dominate. I'm surprised they're still in business, and I'm surprised that they're so everything is so dependent on it.
Absolutely.
You're at their mercy, and businesses, like Facebook. I mean, everybody depends on social media, but it's.
They do. I wish they didn't because it drives me crazy because I can never find what I'm looking for. And which restaurant in town is having a special today? And it's almost impossible to find them.
It's well, doing what we're doing this morning, I think I really miss the old days in the Amish social club, getting together and doing this. And but I granted, it's a little hard to get together with coffee with friends from Germany.
I don't know why.
On Sunday mornings, yes, except through like Facebook and social media. But it's really a cold and impersonal thing too. And I think that's part of the reason that Route 66 is so popular, because social media is so cold and impersonal, and people miss just doing this, just sitting down and actually interacting with a person.
I think that's a very good point. I think that is part of it. Route 66 is something from when everything was simpler and everything was people looked at each other, they smiled at each other. You walked into a store or a restaurant and you smiled at each other, and all because it was just a simpler time. My wife and I were married in July of 1966, and about a year later we decided to move west. I wanted to move to Alaska. My wife would have no part of that. She wanted to move to Southern California. And I said, it's just as crowded as New York with a better climate. We ain't going there. Long story short, we happened to have distant relatives who lived in Phoenix. So we decided we would move to Phoenix. And because we had been married just about a year, she had relatives in Detroit, and I had relatives in Chicago, and then in a town called Champaign, Illinois, which is about 130 miles south of Chicago. It was at that time the site of the only campus of the University of Illinois. So the net result of that is that although driving from New Jersey to Phoenix, you wouldn't necessarily take Route 66 because we've gone up to Chicago and Detroit. So we took Route 66. And of course at that time, it was a mix because they already, some of I-40 existed, but in most cases when you went through a town, you had to go through on Route 66, and the farther west you got, the more likely you were to be on the original Route 66. In some cases, of course, the 2 lanes of I-40 were the original Route 66.
Yes.
So we actually drove all the way across on Route 66. And it was a fascinating experience because you went through all these towns that were the epitome of what small town US was. And the great thing about so much of Route 66 and a lot of other small roads in this country is that you go through those little towns and they are still very much what they were at the peak of being, when they were at their peak. As you know, I'm a great fan of trains and a lot of the tourist railroads. The railroads only exist because they were they were some small town that kind of kept them alive. And so if you travel all these little obscure roads to small towns where this tourist railroad is the driving force for that town, and you have driving the old roads, visiting these small towns. When you leave and you come back to the big city, which of course is where most people live these days, there's this sort of sense, oh wow, I have seen what life was like 50, 75, 100 years ago. And it's kind of refreshing to realize that that still exists someplace. Not everything, not every place is quite as crowded or as hectic as the big city.
You get places, that's another thing, charm of Route 66. And you can't go back. You really wouldn't want to. You know, I mean, let's face it, who wants to travel across the Mojave Desert without air conditioning today? Only crazy people like me do that kind of thing. But you get into these little places, like one of my favorites is Cuba, Missouri. It's a modern, progressive community. They have an astounding.
Hopefully we made the eggs the way the wife did.
I'm sure they are.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You guys
very
need
much.
anything, just let me know, okay?
Cuba has an incredible industrial and business park.
Oh, really?
But yeah, they employ more people there than in the entire that live in the county. But yet it's a small town, under 5,000 people, and it has it's really difficult. The blending of past and present just is almost seamless. It's just really incredible feel and the friendliness of the people. You go to the stores, you go to Shelley's Cafe in the morning for breakfast, and there's the highway patrolman, a couple farmers, and it's just got a really great feel. Well, we won't tease people too much about the food, so we'll kind of cut this off. But I thank you for doing this, Walt, and we'll do this again. Get a couple codgers together for coffee, and no telling what happens, where we wander off on what weird tangents beating our gums. But I appreciate you doing this. We'll see what happens. I'll see if I can get this figured out. Meanwhile, we'll eat some Mexican-style kosher bacon. And some eggs.
Mexican-style kosher bacon. Now we're talking. Talk about mixing ethnicities.
Yes. Folks, we'll talk to you later. Thank you.